Okay, next is Lisa Elliot-Rosas, and she approached us. She was working on a film. She shared what is called a deck, and I had no idea what a deck was before then, but she's going to share some of that with you. She had a film that's entitled, I think now in the works, Henry and the Bohemians, right? And oh, it's Henry and Big Sur, and you've got also another short film that she's sharing with us. That after the questions and the break, we'll show that, The Gift of Wisdom. So, Lisa.
And Big Sur as a space. Just to tell you a little about myself, I found Henry Miller. Okay. I found Henry Miller in the 90s, and I was introduced first to Anna Nin, and through that discovered Henry Miller, started reading some of the books, but it wasn't until the 2000s that I actually went to a Henry Miller library workshop, a writing workshop with Magnus, and through that I got the Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch, and just, it became a Bible to me. Just so many passages. I could open it to any page and just, I read the book, but then I would just open, random pages and passages, and felt that there were so many messages, in there to humanity. And I wanted to make a film, which has now been like a 10-year endeavor, interviewing people in Big Sur. One of them's 100 years old now and still living, Elaine Fitzpatrick. And and Magnus and other people. And so it's been a long endeavor, but a passion project. And so it's still in the works. And I'm just going to read some things about it. And then, so, between the landscape in Big Sur, which really actually planted a seed. When I was small, my parents and I went to Nepenthe, and there that seed was planted, just the rawness, the beauty, the rigid beauty, the mountains, the ocean. And from that point on, it was a seed planted in me. And then when I picked up that book again, it ignited this passion for really the region. So the messages I got in the book of humor, acceptance, authenticity, freedom of expression, flow, connection to live fully and at peace, and how one chooses things fascinated me. Beyond the sex and chaos, he's writing about enlightenment, creation, and breaking free from conformity. He was on an upward spiral in this time period. Like other artists, whether it be Hemingway or Kerouac, had their works and things happened and they went downward. Henry was on a spiritual path. So the connection to nature inspired me to move from LA to Ojai. And as I said, this has been like a 10-year, we're on our seventh rendition of rewriting the film right now. But it is not a bio. It's a film based on universal human truths and messages through the eyes of Henry and Big Sur. And later, I'm also going to be showing a documentary on some wisdom of humanity, and also some excerpts from Henry Miller and Anna Nin. So mainly just a little about this story, and then I'll show you the deck. In the 40s and 50s, Henry Miller found himself drawn to the wild, untouched land in Big Sur once he arrived. He exclaimed, "This is America as the Creator intended it to be." Big Sur did not just change his surroundings, it transformed his soul. It turned his restless wandering into a man who finally understood what it means to live fully, simply and authentically, although he always wrote authentically. At this stage, he went from ego to true self. He discovered who he was in the solitude of Big Sur. yet balancing this with friends, community, writing, art, and purpose. He says, quote, "Only when we are truly alone does the fullness and richness of life reveal itself to us. In simplifying our lives, everything acquires a significance hereto unknown. When we are one with ourselves, the most insignificant blade of grass assumes its proper place in the universe. When we quiet the outer world, the inner world opens. Then we can truly reflect and reframe." Talking about purpose, one of my favorite writers, Viktor Frankl, wrote Man's Search for Meaning. "Those who have a why, a purpose, can bear almost any how." For Henry Miller, Big Sur gave him a why. His purpose became simple: to write, to create, to paint, to love, to grow, to commune with nature. He said if he were to come back in another life, he'd want to be a gardener, someone who tends to life itself. And on his deathbed, he said all he actually wanted was to be understood. I don't know if you've ever seen that video, but it's off now. It was on YouTube, and it was him on his deathbed. Near the end of his life, what mattered to him most wasn't recognition or fame, but peace within himself. He loved life, all of it, the beauty, the struggle, the people, the mess. He surrounded himself with friends, helpers, and fans, sometimes unwanted fans, a small bohemian circle that reflected the same love of life, art, and freedom. Big Sur was more than a place, it was a state of mind. It was here Miller found what he was seeking for: years of balance, beauty, peace, and community. Between work and play, between the masculine and feminine within him, he painted, he wrote letters, played ping pong, had deep talks, oyster parties on the beach, dinner parties, and Greek dancing at Nepenthe. He lived fully. He was present and connected, and through that life, he found what so many never do: a simple, wise joy. The message today: we live in an age that's digital. For Henry, it was industrial. Now it's virtual, where we are constantly connected, but really, rarely truly connected. People scroll endlessly. We measure life in likes and metrics. We chase productivity, not purpose. Henry Miller's Big Sur reminds us that there's another way: to slow down, to live with purpose, to find meaning, not in more, but in enough, to reconnect with nature, with solitude, with friends, and with ourselves. Big Sur was Miller's teacher, a place that offered what the modern world forgets: that peace is not found through escaping, but in accepting and alignment, in living truthfully and courageously. Miller's mindset was radical and still is. He refused to stay in the rat race. He chose joy over fear. He chose creation over conformity. His values were timeless: connection, presence, openness, authenticity, vulnerability, surrender, and adaptability. He transformed from ego to true self in going beyond the I to a deeper path, inspiring and impacting others. There are heroes like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and the woman that I worked with as my script consultant, her name is Dara Marks. She's a professor at UCLA and has several books on archetypes. She called Henry a hero, and the reason why is he reflected, as simple as that. So Henry is the archetype of transformation. He embodied both the hero's outward courage, masculinity, and inner reflection, the feminine. Miller struggled like all of us. He took leaps of faith. He failed. He loved. He lost. But he didn't stay stuck. He decided consciously to be happy. He wrote to discover himself. He painted to play, and he turned pain into art. And through that, he found peace, not by escaping the world, but by embracing it. by saying yes to everything life offered, to joy, to pain, to love, to loss. He called it the miracle of being here now. Big Sur became a kind of bohemian haven for artists, thinkers, lovers, and wanderers, a moment in time. At the beginning, this movie was called Bohemia. It might change again. It's now Big Sur, Henry in Big Sur. It was a place of freedom, a place where you could find, unconventionally express your truth, and still have neighbors you loved. As of today, what would he say? There's a lot of separation, not freedom of speech, and today that is happening. And so Henry showed that you can turn passion into work into art. He was, by his own account, the happiest man alive, not because his life was perfect, but because he accepted it completely. He loved being alive, the whole of it, the wonder and the struggle. So I'm going to show you a bit of the film. And everyone knows this quote: "One's destination is never a place, but rather a new way of looking at things." And we talked about the archetype of Henry. I'm just going to read the quote by Anais Nin. "There is a resemblance between men and women, not a contrast. When a man begins to recognize his feelings, the two unite. When men accept the sensitive side of themselves, they come alive." A story of transcendence. And this quote: "I am convinced that to maintain oneself on this earth is not a hardship, but a pastime, if we live simply and wisely." Henry David Thoreau. And I was telling you about Elaine Fitzpatrick. This is her book, Doing It with the Cosmos, which is in the bookstore. And mainly, we've talked a lot about this in this conference, but Doing It with the Cosmos, Love Beyond Sex, it's the expansion of the spiritual, the mystical, communion with the universe, inspired by Robertson Jeffers' Man Not Apart from Nature. Self-transformation, spiritual growth, reconciling darkness and desire, surrendering to something beyond the self. And one of Elaine's favorite, or her favorite movie, was Zorba the Greek. And let's see. I have that in here. Sorry. Okay, here it is. "To live far from men, not to need them, and yet to love them. To have the stars above, the land to your left, and the sea to your right, and to realize of a sudden that in your heart, life has accomplished its final miracle. It has become a fairy tale." And the quote that inspired me from The Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch, Henry David Thoreau: "What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." So in this book, as you can see the cover, as the Dutch painter in the 15th century, Hieronymus Bosch, it's really about how heaven and hell coexist within the human soul, the madness and the beauty. And the orange is not the oranges we eat, the sun-kissed oranges, but the fruit of awareness. And the simple life in Bohemia in Big Sur. Nature, walks, talks with community of artists, writers, philosophers, to paint, to write, ping pong, dinner parties. So I'm not going to go into the full film story, but I will give a spoiler. In the beginning, he's in LA and in Beverly Glen, and he calls Los Angeles a walking graveyard. And then as time goes on, he is in Big Sur. I thought it was 18 years, someone said 20 years, but around that time period. And he moves here through the community, through the nature, through losing ego and getting deeper into paradise within himself. he discovers himself further. And at the end, spoiler alert, he then can move back to Los Angeles and not call it a walking graveyard anymore. He accepts it. He accepts himself where he's at, and he enjoys it. So we won't go through the whole film, but the main themes are starting with the eye and the aesthetic, going into the ethical, and then the highest form, the spiritual path. And he attains that. And these are some film visuals. So this is with another producer that I'm working with right now. So he came up with these visuals. You see the raw nature, solitude with family, friends, dinner parties. And I took off the cast for now, but everyone knows who these people are. Henry Miller, Varda, who brought him to Big Sur, Annie Snin, Louise, his mother, Linda Sargent, Emma White, Harry Dick Ross, the favorite, Conrad Morcan, and then Bill and Lolly Fawcett, June Miller, Alan Watts, Lepska, and Eve, Carol, and his kids. The list goes on. And these are some comparable film titles. And mainly what's in all of these, it really doesn't have anything to specifically do with these except that it's based on transformation. So within each one of these films, the character transforms from mainly like the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, starting out a struggle and actually goes upward versus downward. That's me. You know who I am now, producer statement. And this is Dar Marks, and I'm just going to end with this. This film, based on Henry Miller's transformation while living in Big Sur, is needed at this time. While there are so many crusades with technology, health, and information overload now, this film focuses on the human condition of ego versus true soul and purpose. It relates to all humans that are seeking peace, love, joy, and happiness. It is the true arc in life of the hero's journey. Henry went from the reputation and ego side of being a sex seeker to a deep spiritual man. Women were always his challenge, from his mother's wounds to an array of women he married. But his kids' love and nature of wisdom, he was able to keep finding his inner light. Arc of struggle and dream. This film, Henry, has constant survival challenges and overcomes them by diving deeper within. He realizes his purpose in writing and how nature, wisdom, and community play such a large role in his soul's purpose. The walks in the woods, Pacific Ocean cliff, intimate talks with friends and fellow artists, writers, artists, thinkers, the play and joy with his kids, the humor, and peace within himself. This bohemian period in the 40s and 50s in Big Sur, there was a radiant connection in life. Thank you.